Yeah, look, it affected the team big time. It was a massive blow. There was a lot of concern for Mark's safety and a lot of concern for the morale of the team. But ultimately, I suppose it pulled everybody closer together. There was a bigger cause to play for, I suppose. Having one of the stalwarts to the side not being there anymore really galvanized the guys and probably lifted them at that extra 10% that was required in a big series like that. Yeah, look, that Switzerland camp is probably one of the most memorable things everybody would have experienced in their lives. It was an unbelievable experience. We all pushed ourselves and did things that we never thought we'd ever do. We were in a place that we never thought we'd ever get to, and we pushed ourselves to limits that possibly some of the players haven't been pushed to before. So um, it was an unbelievable start to an amazing campaign. Just not just England but Australia as well, and it was referred to a lot in the months ahead. Whenever times were tough, guys would always rekindle and rethink about what they went through in Switzerland, and were then able to just lift it up that extra notch because of the strength that they gathered and momentum that was gathered in that Switzerland trip. So it was immensely important in the longer scheme of things.
When you came into the tie going on around, how did you find the culture when you started?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that because the Protea is quite a new brand and a developing brand, um, the affinity of the players needed to become entrenched. Players needed to know what they were playing for, what they stood for. And Graham and the previous coach Corey did an amazing job in developing that brand and that reason for playing. Um, the Protea emblem, what it symbolizes, the responsibility that comes with representing your country, and what the badge symbolizes. So it was a massive learning experience for myself, for some of the younger players coming in, for the new management, for Gary, for Paddy, to see the steps that have been put in place. And it was really a continuation of what had previously taken place in trying to develop that brand and trying to foster that environment that had been developed by the previous regime.
And how far?
Yeah, big time. I think definitely within the playing group there's a massive allegiance to the Protea. We know that the brand that the Springbok rugby has is a massive brand in world sport, and we're trying to gather the same momentum for the Protea badge. And the players have all identified with it, and it's a brand we're really proud of and really are looking to foster in the future. Look, I think just being part of that massive success that the team achieved was something I'll treasure for the rest of my life. But I think standing on that Lord's balcony the day that we eventually got that last wicket, with all the tension and the controversy that had gone through Mornay's no ball, and Matthew Pryor playing really well, and the whole Kevin Peterson saga, it was just immensely proud, and it's a moment I'll always treasure, being on the balcony with Gary Kirsten the day we eventually won a test match at Lord's and became the #1 test side in the world. Is a memory I'll always treasure. Look, I think the tour to Australia started off a little bit quietly because there was a little bit of disruption in Brisbane with the weather, and then fizzled out into a draw. The Adelaide test, Mark, was the last day. I think I did an interview and said, look, we're under pressure here, but we've still got some quality players, and not knowing that Faf du Plessis would probably play one of the best test innings in the history of the game. So that is probably the standout moment in that test series. But also a partnership between Graeme Smith and Hashim Amla, I think on the third day in Perth, where I think they put on 200 in a session, was one of the greatest batting displays I think I've ever seen. It was unbelievable the way they absolutely took the attack to Australia in a situation where the game was very much maybe 60-40 in our favour, and then they just took it to 90-10 in our favour within an hour and a half. And it was a partnership that epitomised the confidence of the side and epitomised the way this test side had progressed. So that is a huge moment as far as I can concern in the whole summer last year. Yeah, look, Gary and I think we get on really well, not just through cricket but as people. I think we share similar values in life, and we try and, I suppose, have a similar way of coaching and managing people. And look, I've known him for a good couple of years now. I threw him a lot of balls when he was a player in the test side, and worked with him as a franchise coach, and he was my batting consultant at the Warriors, and thoroughly enjoyed my 2 years under him as the assistant coach. Learned a massive deal about dealing with people and managing players and strategizing and analyzing, and it was definitely 2 of the most enjoyable years of my coaching career thus far, working under Gary Kirsten.
And a lot of people found it.
Yeah, there are big shoes to fill. I mean, Gary set such high standards and such good precedent. It's going to be a big challenge maintaining those standards and precedents that he set. But really enjoying it thus far. I've learned a lot from him. He's given me a lot of confidence in my coaching ability, and has given me a side that's in really good condition at the moment. So hopefully continually do what he's been doing, and hopefully take the test team to the next level again. Yeah, look, I think in a few years' time, once we all move on from being involved in the Proteas team, we want to leave a legacy. We want to leave the team feeling that we were part of something really special, not just to be number one for a season or 6 months, but really become a dominant force in this format of the game for a period of time. Something the way the Australians did maybe in the 90s, maybe the way the West Indies did in the 80s, where we can really be regarded as one of the truly great test sides in the history of the game. So it's a long way to go, a lot of work still to be done, but hopefully we can reach those goals at some stage. Yeah, I'll never forget, I actually went for a run of physio, and I got back to the hotel and I read one of the articles and told Gary about it. It was quite funny, where the media was saying the English public need to be refunded because they'd been robbed by an ill-prepared South African team. And we actually thought we bowled quite well in that first day. We didn't set the world alight, but we had a measure of control in the game. And I think Gary might have spoken to some of the players about what was being said, and I think that inspired some of the players to prove people that this team is ready and have got and has what it takes to knock England over. And I think there were a few adjustments tactically which took place the second day, and the rest is history. I think Dale knocked over Alistair Cook pretty early that morning, and then it was a little bit of a procession, and then Hashim Amla put together an unbelievable innings, 311, a World South African record in Test cricket, and we finished the Test match off really well on day 5. Yeah, look, I think as he got closer to the milestone, everyone was very nervous. I think that record previously was held by A.B. de Villiers, and prior to that, Graham Pollock, Darryl Cullen, Gary Kirsten, no one had ever scored 300 for South Africa. So there was a great deal of tension in the change room. And I think if anyone deserved to get 300 on that tour, it was Hashim Amla, through his doggedness and his preparation going into that series, the way he thought about his technique and how he was going to play players, and how meticulous he was in his preparation going into that series. So it was a massive sense of relief when he did get that boundary over extra cover to bring up the 300, and everyone was ecstatic with his performance.
It was also that.
No, obviously it was a fairy tale finish for Graham, winning a test match, getting 100 in his 100th test match. I don't think many people would have scripted that or would have thought it had worked out that perfectly. But also an amazing achievement for a guy that's been an amazing leader for the test side. Yeah, look, I think there was a lot of hype with Dale Steyn and Jimmy Anderson coming into the England Test series as to who the #1 bowler in the world is. And I think Dale just dispelled all those doubts some people might have had. He proved why he was #1 bowler in the world. He bowled really quickly when needed to, got the ball to swing under tough conditions at times, and really led the attack unbelievably well, and was instrumental in winning that test match at Lords to become the #1 test side in the world. Look, he's been an unbelievable performer for South Africa now for the last 7 or 8 years, and should he stay fit, will continue to do that for the next 5 or 6 years, and he's definitely one of the great bowlers of this generation. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, look, I think he was obviously nervous playing his first test match. I think the situation of the game was probably good for him to go in and make a debut, because I think in the first innings he was under a lot of pressure. He was batting with the tail, he was batting with callous, put in a good performance there. And then in the second innings, I suppose most people were expecting us to lose, so there wasn't really that much for him to lose in terms of his own personal game. So I think as he started developing and batting with A.B. de Villiers, he thought, well, let's get to lunch and see what happens. And then he got through till drinks after lunch and started looking and said, well, there's only 60 overs left now. Maybe if I bat another 30, we'll see what happens. And I think it just went from there. And I think he really focused on one ball, one session at a time type thing. And that paid dividends at the end of the day, because I think if he had looked at it in the whole context of trying to bat out a day and a half, he'd have just been completely devastated by it all. So I think he approached it magnificently well, taking it one ball at a time, one session at a time, and didn't look too far ahead, and didn't let the occasion and the importance of the innings get to him. And it's probably one of the great Test innings of all time, I suppose.
And lastly,
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think there was a lot more hype in the Test series in England. I think England were the number one side at that stage. We were number two. It was billed as the battle of the two Test powers at that particular stage. There was definitely a sense of we've got to do this. I think when we got to Australia, it was a sense of we're expecting to do this because they'd previously done it in the last tour, beating Australia there. And with all respect to Australia, they probably weren't playing at their best at that particular stage, whereas England seemed to be at the top of their game. So I think it was a lot more satisfying, rewarding, emotionally draining winning the Test series in England than possibly the one in Australia. Maybe because of the way the one finished in Australia with a comfortable win of close to 280 or 300 runs, whatever it was, it might not have seemed as tense as well, that last Test. Whereas the England Test match really went down to the wire at Lord's, the home of cricket. So there's probably a lot more emotion involved in the Test series in England than there was in the one in Australia. But two of the toughest places to win in the world, and can never take it for granted. And what was achieved there was an unbelievable feat to win back-to-back series in both those countries.